Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. I am thrilled we have Graham Nash with us today. We'll chat with Graham in just a second, but first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read a few next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So, Graham Nash's incredible career spans over 60 years. He's a two-time Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee with Crosby, Stills and Nash and the Hollies. He's a Grammy Award winner and two-time inductee to the Songwriters Hall of Fame as a solo artist and with Crosby, Stills and Nash. With Crosby, Stills and Nash and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, he has written and performed some of the greatest songs ever, including his Marrakesh Express, Teach Your Children, and Our House. His solo career yielded 2 albums, which include Chicago, We Can Change the World, and Military Madness. He's been a passionate advocate for peace and social and environmental justice, and created the No Nukes Musicians United for Safe Energy concerts with Jackson Browne and Bonnie Raitt in 1979. Graham is also the author of the New York Times bestselling memoir, Wild Tales, and he's a renowned photographer and visual artist whose work has been shown in galleries and museums worldwide. Most recently, he released A Life in Focus, the photography of Graham Nash, and his most recent album is 2023's Now. Graham, welcome into the back room.
Thank you very much. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm doing great, and I got to ask you to just indulge me for a couple of moments while I go a little fanboy on you, because I've been a huge fan for 6 decades, and your music has carried me through all the highs and the lows, including some really dark, traumatic times. And I just want to tell you how much you and your music have meant to me, and that I am beyond honored and thrilled to chat with you today.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you.
So let's go back a little bit in time. When you were a kid back in Lancashire, is this where you thought and where you hoped you'd be at 84?
Not at all. I've always lived day to day, and I very rarely plan anything. My life happens to me, and I just respond to what's going on. So when I was younger, I knew I wanted to be a musician. I knew I wanted to play music for people that could, maybe affect their mood, affect their mind, make them shake their ass, but I never thought that I would make it to 84.
Why?
My father died when he was 46.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought when I was approaching my 46th birthday that, am I going to just drop dead like my father did, or do I carry on here? That day passed, of course, but I never thought that at 84 I would still be making music and still filling halls and having a great time as I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm. And so at 84, as you look to the future, do you see 100 or longer?
I very rarely think about what's going on tomorrow, but I do feel healthy, and I feel very energetic about what's going on. I'm looking forward to this tour, particularly playing with the 3 guys that I'm playing with. Sure, why not? I mean, I saw Segovia when he was like 92, and he was fantastic. And I thought, why not me? Well, I could do that, So even though I do try and think about approaching 100 years old, I know the reality is that probably my time is coming to an end.
You never know. Longevity today, it's a whole different ballgame,
Isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. And what about your family? Any music in your family when you were growing up?
Not at all. No, we were a very poor family. We did manage to get a radio that just showed 3 channels on the BBC. But I was listening to the American Top 40 when I was a teenager. And I loved the music. I wanted to do that. I must give all my thanks to my parents, because I think they recognized my passion for music and only encouraged that instead of getting a real job, you know.
You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to play the drums. I play the drums now, but when I was a kid, my parents were like, too loud. And I always thought, like, imagine if like Ringo's parents had said that to him.
Really. But they didn't, did they?
They didn't, play the violin, Ringo.
Yes.
And musical inspirations during that time when you were listening to the radio, were there artists in particular that you just listened to and were like, you wanted to do the same thing?
Absolutely. The Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly, even Elvis before he went into the army, Jerry Lee Lewis, Fats Domino, Little Richard, the Platters. Yeah, I loved them all. I wanted to do that. And it was very obvious when the Everly Brothers played at the Free Trade Hall in Manchester, where, I was raised in Salford, which is a district of Manchester. But in 1962, Alan Clark and I went to see the Everly Brothers at the Free Trade Hall. And two things that we realized. One, that there was no bus waiting outside. I'm not a bus like a normal English bus, but a traveling bus. So that we knew they were going, to the next city, And we also realized that the best hotel in Manchester at the time, the Midland Hotel, was only 100 yards away. And that's probably where they were staying. So Alan and I missed our last English bus home. We knew we had a 9-mile walk in the drizzle. But we stood on the steps of the Midland Hotel. And about maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, they came around the corner. They had been to a bar. They were, they were there. Don and Phil were talking to me and Alan Clark, and we were saying that we loved them. We loved their music. One day maybe me and Alan would be able to, make music professionally. And they were very encouraging. And I've never forgotten that feeling that I had when my heroes were remembering my name and Alan's name and being very encouraging.
I love that you went fanboy on the Everly Brothers.
Oh, indeed. Yes.
It's a great story. So when you look back at your journey from the Hollies to Crosby, Stills and Nash, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and into your solo career, what do you feel is the biggest creative leap you made as an artist?
One of them would be when I heard the Hollies for the very first time on the radio. And the second one would be when David, Stephen, and I sang together first in Joni's living room.
Mm.
Those were the two main points of my musical life that I remember, if I had to choose two specific moments.
Yeah, it's interesting you mention that, because your harmonies are so beautiful and so soulful. And when you first sang together with Stephen and David, did you get a sense of like, oh my God, this is magic? Because it was magic.
Yeah. And all three of us recognized that very instantly. David and Stephen were trying to get like an Everly Brothers kind of thing together, because, the Buffalo Springfield had broken up and David had been thrown out of the Birds. And so they were singing this song called You Don't Have to Cry, which was on the first CSN record. They stopped. I said, Stephen, that's an incredibly beautiful song. Really well done. Do me a favor, sing it one more time. They sang it. They got to the end of it. I said, okay, I'm a decent singer. I'm a decent musician. Just sing it one more time. They looked at each other, they shrugged, and they started to sing. And after 45 seconds of me singing 3-part harmony with David and Stephen, we had to stop and laugh. I mean, yes, the Hollies and the Birds and the Buffalo Springfield were decent harmony bands, but nothing sounded like me and David and Stephen singing together. And we knew that it was magic. And I knew that I would have to go back to England and lead the Hollies and come and follow that magical sound. And that's exactly what I did.
So when fans like me listen to harmonies like that, we wonder how rehearsed it is or how organic it is. Like when you first sat down to sing together, did it just come out? Was it just instinctive?
Yes, very much so. And that was part of the magic, because as I said, we'd only been singing together for 45 seconds at that point. But all of us knew, including Joni, that this was magic, that something really fantastic musically had happened. And I think we all looked at each other and we knew that we would have to sing together for the next few years. And here we are at 84, still thinking about that magic.
It's really incredible because it makes you think that there are people out in this world, partners that you could perhaps create magic with, that you may or may not ever meet. And you were really, the three of you were really fortunate to meet.
Yeah.
And it was Joni who kind of brought you guys together, right?
Actually, it was Cass Elliot. Obviously, I loved the Mamas and the Papas. The Hollies were in Los Angeles, and as you know, Laurel Canyon is only 10 minutes away from the city of Los Angeles. Cass asked me, she said, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, no. What do you want to do tomorrow? She said, well, I'm going to pick you up at around noon. I want you to meet a friend of mine. She picked me up. We drove to Laurel Canyon. We went to a house, and there was David Crosby lying on the couch, rolling joints on whilst retaining my eye contact, and that's how I met David. And I think Cass really understood before we did what we would sound like had we the balls to sing together.
Yeah. And, well, there was such great harmonies in her group.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Cass knew what harmony was. She knew instinctively what we would sound like, and I must. I every time I say my prayers at night to the great spirit of this universe, I thank Cass.
Well, it is serendipitous, and like I said before, I wonder how many people in this world never get to meet their partners to create magic like that. So what did joining forces with David and Stephen, how did that unlock you musically in ways that you hadn't yet discovered?
When I was in the Hollies, if you didn't know John and Paul and George and Ringo, you were on a different planet. It was obvious what they were doing. It was obvious that they would become the musical force that they have become. Obviously, to my mind, there'll never be a band as good as the Beatles ever again. But when I came to America, people wanted to hear my opinion. They wanted to know what I thought about a particular track. They wanted to know, and it opened up my heart and my musical mind forever, because I realized that I did have something that I could contribute to music. I did feel that I had the passion and the pleasure of making music, and I think David and Stephen knew that instinctively. And here we are talking about it right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. So Woodstock was just the second time you guys, Crosby, Stills, Nash, performed live together, where Stephen famously told the crowd, "We're scared shitless." Describe what you were feeling in that moment, performing before 500,000 people.
Well, obviously, I'd already had many hits when I was with the Hollies. I think we had, over a dozen top 10 records. So I was used to large crowds. The thing I remember most distinctly about Woodstock was me and David doing Guinevere. It was one acoustic guitar and two voices. And, sometimes almost 500,000 people in front of us. And I knew that we could do it. I knew that we could project ourselves all the way to the very back row of those hundreds of thousands of people. And it was at that moment that I really realized the power of music, what it was doing to bring people together. We thought a different way than our parents did. We had our own sense of the political history of the United States. We knew that we were not alone, that there were at least 500,000 people that thought exactly the same way about the Vietnam War, about women's rights, about the struggle that Black people were going through in this country to try and just survive. And we knew we were not alone. And it was an incredibly powerful moment for me.
Yeah. And you guys went on like before Hendrix went on, right? Monday morning?
Yes.
Did you stick around for that?
We saw Jimmy start, and we knew we had to get out of there. And we physically had to get out of there, and get an early start on leaving, because 500,000 people were going to be also.
Right.
So I do remember the faint echo of Jimmy playing the Star Spangled Banner as we were leaving.
When sometimes people ask you, like, what would you like to go back in time to be a part of? I want to be at that concert.
It was an incredible concert. When people have asked me that very question, if you could go back in time, what would you go to? And my obvious, and to me, I would love to have gone back and visited Beethoven when he was doing his Fifth Symphony, lit by 20,000 candles, and him having to be turned around by the orchestra leader to let him know what the audience were going through, because of course he was almost totally deaf at that point.
Yeah, that would have been a moment too. When Neil entered the picture and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young was born, how did that change the chemistry, both musically and personally, with you guys?
The addition of Neil Young really changed us a lot. Obviously, we had done a tremendous amount of work in doing music that was 3-part harmony, and now we had to change because we had the addition of a different voice. Mm-hmm. So musically, it was very different, and personality-wise, it was very different too. We always felt that Neil was never really a part of the group, that he was very self-centered, very determined to. Well, let me just say that David and Stephen saw, Help by the Beatles, that movie. But Neil was watching the Bob Dylan on his first movie. We always felt that Neil was not a part of our group. Mm-hmm. Strangely enough, even though we made tremendous music together. But the very first time that CSN ever did a live performance themselves was 1977. Almost 8 years after we first started singing together. Mm. That was the first time that CSN were without Neil.
And you've had periods of turbulence and reconciliation with the band over the decades. What's your relationship with Neil and Stephen these days?
I often talk to Stephen. I haven't had any contact with Neil for at least a couple of years. We know what Neil wanted. Neil is going for that as a solo artist, and God bless him. Mm-hmm. He is really a great musician. He is very cognizant of the fact that there is a muse of music that should be followed, and he follows it, and God bless him. But I haven't spoken to Neil personally for a couple of years, but I do speak to Stephen, and during the Fire Aid benefit concert that Irving Azoff put on, after the fires in Los Angeles, that was when I did teacher children with a really great group, Dawes, Dawes, and Stephen. So, that was about almost a year ago, and that was the last time that I played with Stephen.
Do you think you'd do that again at some point?
No. A lot of people saying, why don't Crosby and Nash and Young go out? But since David passed,
right,
which was a very, very sad episode in our lives, we realized that we had lost the heart of the band, and no performance by the three of us or the two of us could ever make up for the loss of David.
Yeah. You mentioned Laurel Canyon before, and it's been mythologized and revered over the years in articles and books and movies and documentaries, but you lived it for a while. Talk about that sense of community and musical kinship that we hear about when people write and talk about those days in that particular neighborhood.
The film director, Bob Zemeckis, is doing finishing up a documentary movie on Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Oh, great.
Neil was invited to take part in the documentary, but he refused to do so. But you will find the thread of that musical unity in that doc when it comes out, probably this year sometime.
And, people like me who were I was born in 59, so I grew up in the 60s as a small kid. And we look back on that period with a kind of utopian reverence. What was it like living through those years as part of the greatest musical and cultural explosion? Did it feel historic in any way at the time, or was it just like wildly fun, free, creative, chaotic, loud?
It was all those things. But we did recognize that we were taking part in a particular history. America was coming out of a gray zone with the Eisenhower years and the Richard Nixon years. And with all due respect, we thought Richard Nixon was nuts, but look what we're dealing with today.
Yeah, I saw your post on Instagram today. You didn't hold back.
There is no holding back.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I think Trump has tried to destroy the truth.
He's doing a good job.
He's doing a brilliant job, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I just finished writing a song called Out in the Snow, which is about ice. The lyrics are between myself and my wife, Amy Grantham, and the music is all mine.
I wanted to ask you about that because your former bandmates wrote great protest songs, and you wrote, Military Madness, Chicago, We Can Change the World. And we see Bruce Springsteen recently.
God bless him.
With his song, yep. Because you're right, that today is a very unfortunate time to be living in, and we need those songs more than ever.
I believe we do. And I believe that to a certain degree, music is one of the truths that is left standing. I think that the ability of people like me to be able to talk to an audience, to talk about what's going on, to talk about Gaza, to talk about Putin, to talk about what's going on now is incredibly important right now. I think that we need a happier time. We need a different time than exists right now in certainly in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's when we count on artists more than ever to get us through the dark times.
Music is magic.
So speaking of music, I want to ask you about a few songs. Our House. I love the story about how you met and became involved with Joni Mitchell and how this incredibly sweet love song came about. Can you share that with us?
The last time I was in Los Angeles, I was being driven around by our tour manager, Blair Woods. And I said, hey, Blair, you want to see the house?
Mm.
Is it close? And I said, yeah, it's 5 minutes away. So we went. I pulled into the driveway. There was a man working on repairing a car there or a van. And I got out and I said, I don't want to disturb you, but my name is Graham Nash. And he said, oh, of course you are. You want to come on in? So we went into the house. And I must tell you, the feeling that I had was unbelievable to me.
Mm.
Remembering exactly what had happened in that room, what had been created. I mean, Joni wrote most of her early albums in that room.
Wow.
CSN was born in that room. And the song Our House came very quickly to me. Joni had bought a vase that she wanted earlier that day. She was in the garden of the house, 8217 Lookout Mountain, trying to find some weeds or some, dying flowers to put in the vase. That meant she wasn't at the piano. That meant that I was. And I wrote Our House in about an hour, just over an hour.
Hmm.
It's a lovely story because everyone has a love for their home. Everybody on the planet loves their home. And I think that in a way, I managed to touch a nerve in millions of people.
And it was kind of like a gloomy, rainy day, right? When you were...
It was freezing. It was cold. It was rainy.
So the song was like a way to fix that a little. Yeah.
I wanted to bring some sunshine into the world.
Well, you're a lucky man, Graham, because when you sit in your home and you have like a feeling of love for a home and a woman, you can sit down and write a classic song. The rest of us just look around and go, yeah, isn't this cool?
Well, you're right. I am a lucky man.
And at the time, you described Joni as the love of your life. What was it about her and that relationship that was so unique and captured your heart that way?
I've always loved incredibly bright, beautiful women, I must admit. And Joni was both. Not only was she a very beautiful woman, but look, the first night that we ever spent together, she played me, over a dozen of the most unbelievable songs. I mean, as a songwriter, to hear somebody doing that was insanely beautiful for me, and I'll always remember that night, always. Joni is both beautiful and incredibly talented. I have a feeling that if people, in 100 years' time want to talk about the 60s, the late 60s, early 70s, and that time in Laurel Canyon, I think they will remember, obviously, they'll remember the Beatles. They'll remember Bob Dylan. They'll remember James Taylor and Paul Simon. Jimi Hendrix, they'll remember, but I think most people will fade in people's memories.
Well, I think Joni is timeless.
Indeed.
Teach your children. Speaking of timeless, what a timeless message. What inspired you to write that song at that time? And I'm not sure how many people know that Jerry Garcia played the steel guitar on that.
He played pedal steel on that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had started teaching children when I was coming to the end of my time with the Hollies. I'm a collector of really strange, wonderful things. And one of the things is photography. Obviously, I'm a photographer because I have a couple of books out already of my images, and I'm working on a third one now. But it was when I had loaned about 130 images that I had collected to a museum in Santa Clara in California, and I've never insinuated that I want the images to be shown in a particular way. When you put an image next to another image, they talk to each other. And so I was looking at a picture of my son Jackson when he was about 4 years old, and it was next to a photograph that I'd collected by of a man called Krupp, who was the German family that provided most of the weapons in World War I and World War II. And I realized at that moment that if we didn't teach our children to think differently, that humanity itself was in great danger. And so I managed to finish the song Teach Your Children then. And when David and Stephen and I were cutting that song, we had made a rough track of it with Stephen on acoustic, Dallas Taylor, our drummer, on tambourine, and our vocals. We got to the part where there's supposed to be a solo of some sort, you know. Both Stephen and Neil looked at me when we finished recording and we said, you know, is there anything we can do that's a little different? You know, I mean, you Stephen and Neil had played a lot of guitar on the Deja Vu record. And Crosby said, oh, yeah, you know, we were in a series of studios in San Francisco, the Wally Heider studios. And we were in Studio A, the Jefferson Airplane were in Studio B, and in Studio C were the Grateful Dead. We were all making records at the same time. Mm-hmm. Crosby said, I hear that Jerry Garcia has just learned to play steel guitar. You know, maybe that's the sound we need. We made a rough 2-track of what we had done. I told David to go into Studio C to the Grateful Dead, play it for Jerry, and if he liked it, maybe he would play. Jerry loved the song. He brought his pedal steel and his amp into our studio, and I pressed record on the recording machine because I know that, you know, magic can sometimes happen, and then if you're not recording, you've missed it.
Yeah.
Jerry played it once. We got to the end. I said, Garcia, that was incredible. He said, really? I said, you finding your way through that song for the first time was magic. And he wanted to do another track because he had made a couple of mistakes. I said, obviously, you're Jerry Garcia. You can do as many tracks as you want, but I must tell you, I'm not going to use it. I will repair the 2 mistakes that you think you made, but you finding your way through that song was just magic, and that's the way it will be.
It was magic. Marrakesh Express. So as the story goes, you were on a train from Casablanca to Marrakesh. You left your boring first-class cabin, hung out in third class, partied with some people, cooking food, and a bunch of ducks, pigs, and chickens running around, and then went back to your seat and wrote this amazing song. Do I have that right?
Yes, that's exactly what happened. As a matter of fact, I just found my original lyrics that were written on the back of a Robert Heinlein book that I was reading, Silver Locust, something like that. But I just found the original lyrics of me writing that.
I'm trying to envision the ducks and the pigs and the chickens on a train. Literally. Yeah. And
it was an unbelievable moment.
And Marrakesh Express marked a turning point for you creatively. What about that experience in Morocco made you want to leave the Hollies and head in a new direction?
The Hollies didn't particularly like Marrakesh Express when I first played it for them. I always thought it was a decent song, and so did Crosby. And it was him that said, no, they're the crazy people. This is a very decent song. Let me, you, and Stephen record this. And that's what we did. And somewhere in the bowels of EMI at Abbey Road, in their tape vault, is a track of the Hollies trying to do Marrakesh Express. And it's not very good, frankly.
God, I would love to hear that. You mentioned David's passing before. How did that change, or how does that change the way you look at those songs during those years?
I have great memories of me and David singing together. We had a certain blend. He trusted me completely into where I was going to go on any of his songs. And I think that me and David really made some incredible music. David's passing was incredibly painful, particularly for his wife, Jan, and his son, Django, of course, but also his musical partners. David was an incredible musician. I've been listening to a lot of his music that he made and that we made recently. Mm-hmm. And I just realized what an unbelievably different musician David Crosby was. His inflections of jazz into his music, his injection of Everly Brothers kind of stuff in his music. He was a very different musician than anybody that I know.
Mm. My last question. If you had to choose one song from your catalog that you feel best captures who you are as a songwriter, what would it be and why?
That's a very interesting question. I would say with CSN, I would say, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes was a great song.
Amazing song.
But if I'm trying to find something of my own that I wrote, that I sang, or me and David sang, it would either be Cathedral or Wind on the Water, but a song I wrote called Cold Rain really tries to explain exactly where I came from.
Graham, amazing conversation. I really appreciate your generosity with your time. Good luck with the tour. I'd love to come see you. I'm in Manhattan, so I'm going to try to make it up there in Tarrytown, April 8th.
Yes. Right. It was a pleasure talking to you, Andy, really.
All righty. Take care. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhinecliff, with additional editing by Maddie Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Langell. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.